everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the Coach's Call. Thanks for tuning in. If you're enjoying the show, please consider subscribing. Love to have you around long term. So, game one for the Montreal Canadiens and Toronto Maple Leafs is in the books. And you know what? I want to talk about how these two teams who are heading, who are supposedly heading in different directions for this season, have the same problems. And if you didn't watch game one, spoiler alert, the Toronto Maple Leafs beat the Montreal Canadiens 6-5 in a shootout win. During the game, they both exchanged leads a couple of times. But here's what was apparent to me, and it was apparent to me during the preseason as well. And it's this: both the Montreal Canadiens and the Toronto Maple Leafs have a goaltending challenge, and both of them have to work on their defensive game. Now, why is that important when you're one team or the other here? Well, the Toronto Maple Leafs are, I think, in the top 5 of the teams that are projected to be in the running for the Stanley Cup yet again. And the Montreal Canadiens are considered a team that's in rebuilding mode. So, look, the Habs goaltending last night was atrocious. Jake Allen had some, what we could call mental lapses or lack of focus. He just let in some goals late in the game that you just don't let those goals in if you want to give your team a chance to win. Now, he made some great saves in overtime, but you didn't even need to get to overtime. And on the other end, Samsonov, or however you want to say your name, it just depends, I think, on how excited the Toronto Maple Leaf announcers are and how they say that name. And the announcers, not to get off track, and the announcers, I was on them last year, but boy, they didn't waste any time. Game one, their announcing sounded like they were going to win the Stanley Cup last night. It was just through the roof, just really out there. I just say, hey, enjoy it, get excited when it's time to get excited, but you can't get excited, when they make a good pass or, something simple. Anyways, Samsonov on the other end, I don't think he was any better than Jake Allen. I was watching it thinking to myself, neither one of these goalies looks like they want to win the game. And now defensively, both teams, they had some defensive breakdowns. The forwards on both teams made some really nice plays. But here's where you're worried if you're the Toronto Maple Leafs, or here's when you look at both teams and you say, okay, well, one's heading towards, predicted to head towards the Stanley Cup. If their defense is that bad, but the Montreal Canadiens aren't expected to go for the Stanley Cup this year, they're in rebuild. They have a younger core. They have way more upside than the Toronto Maple Leafs. So to me, the Toronto Maple Leafs, if this is a Stanley Cup run, they're in trouble. I know it's game one, and I know there's a lot of hockey. There is a lot of hockey, but I watched the preseason, and the habits are there. No pun intended. The habits for the Toronto Maple Leafs are there. Okay, they don't have solid goaltending, and they don't have solid D, and there's no long-term upside to that core in Toronto. On the other hand, the Montreal Canadiens do have upside in their young D. They've got a lot of depth. You're going to see them grow. I don't know if it's later this season or next season. They're going to look very different, and they're not going to lose those games, I think, late in the period like that. But they still have to attend their goaltending, and look at that and say, what do we do there? Jake Allen's not your long-term answer. Sam Montembeault is just hot and cold in the same game, or he can go in stretches. And I think they should give Caden Primo a bigger look. Anyways, short, and as they say, maybe sweet, game one is in the books. Toronto Maple Leafs, Montreal Canadiens, they have the same problems. Two teams heading in different directions. Habs got the better upside. Let's see what happens next. That's the Coach's Call. Thanks for tuning in, and please subscribe. Take care.